Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Battle Cry with me, Shiv Arur. This is the only television show that gets you up close with our warriors, our weapons, and the way India fights. And that's become so important right now. Things lie on a razor's edge. 1 week after the Indian Army has taken some decisive, proactive actions in eastern Ladakh. And that's our big focus on how things have completely changed on the frontiers.
Ladakh on a razor's edge. Standoff more volatile than ever. After India acts to thwart China, after India changes the rules, situation could escalate any time. The truth of what it has taken to put China on notice. The big story on Battle Cry.
With things so delicate and volatile and on a razor's edge, like I said, in eastern Ladakh, after the Indian Army's actions 1 week ago, the fact is, unlike China, India leads by example. And that's why India's army chief has spent 2 days this week on the front lines with the troops. He spent time in Chushul, less than 10 kilometers from where Indian Army forces and Special Frontier Forces had taken over strategic heights. In China, they can only dream for this kind of backing from the military leadership.
Leading from the front, Army Chief General Manoj Mukund Narwane has spent the last 36 hours with his troops on the ground. At the front lines of eastern Ladakh, facing off with China. Unlike Chinese troops, who won't ever get a chance to see their military leaders, here's the Indian Army Chief at the front lines. He even traveled to Chushul, within sight of the latest and most aggressive flashpoint. And hours after meeting his commanders and soldiers, he spoke out, but to this country as well as to the other side. He started with a factual declaration of the situation.
Well, as you know, for the last 2-3 months, the situation has been a little tense. But we have continuously been engaging with China, both at the military and the diplomatic level.
As the man calling the shots, his words reverberate and come as a reminder that conflict is a real possibility. But then he goes on to make the categorical claim that the Indian Army's actions in the last week have been unprecedented.
Keeping in view of the situation, we had undertaken some precautionary deployments for our own safety and security. And these deployments we undertook along the LAC so that our security and integrity remain safeguarded.
The meaning is clear. As we told you here on India Today, the Indian Army is no longer playing defensively, but preempting and taking first mover actions to thwart the Chinese.
They are highly motivated, their morale is high, and they are fully prepared to deal with any situation that may arise.
This isn't a casual claim by the Army Chief. With winter approaching and long developments likely, his presence on the ground had hugely boosted morale that has already been high. A major message to the adversary.
We are very sure that through this medium of talks, whatever differences we have will be resolved, and we will ensure that the status quo is not changed and we are able to safeguard our interests.
The Army Chief has echoed India's stance that a resolution through dialogue remains a priority, but the unsaid is even louder. That China will be responsible for the cost of any misadventure or underestimation of India's will to not just defend but offend too. This was General Narwane's 4th visit to Ladakh during the current standoff. He earlier visited along with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and then with Defense Minister Rajnath Singh. It is on his shoulders that a war-ready army stays awake and on its feet. Bureau Report, India Today.
Right through this standoff, there has been a diplomatic engagement. There have been multiple rounds of talks between the two armies at every level, but they've resulted in absolutely nothing. They haven't been able to stop the situation from getting out of hand and reaching the kind of precarious war-like atmosphere that's there in eastern Ladakh. Well, now the ministers are engaging with each other, but does that promise to resolve the situation? India is very clear. We've changed the rules of engagement in the last 6 days, and the Indian Army is very clear. Even while the ministers talk, we are for peace, but we will fight to protect the integrity of this country.
After 4 months in a bitter standoff that has severely escalated, millions of eyes were glued to these images. The first high-level India-China engagement since the Ladakh standoff began, and since the bloodshed in Galwan. While Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh went into the meeting bereft of expectations, India wanted to know why the Chinese were suddenly so keen to talk. Is China on the back foot? Is China striking a peaceful note? Chinese old mind games? It is China that wanted to talk, and following a request from their defense minister, India's Rajnath Singh met with his counterpart in Moscow on Friday. The meeting came after Indian Army's decisive actions in eastern Ladakh, storming dominant heights and putting Chinese aggressions on notice. You might be wondering, what were these talks about? What's China's real game here? This is, after all, a country that has mounted serial aggressions in Ladakh while pretending to hold military-level talks. So why has it now requested a meeting between defense ministers? Let's look close at those possibilities we began this report with. Is China on the back foot? While conflict is never as simple as that, it is undeniable that Indian Army's recent preemptive actions have caught China off guard. They weren't expecting the normally defensive Indian Army to take aggressive initiative to turn the tables. The next option is China striking a peaceful note. Once again, this needs to be looked at very carefully. A country that has invested enormously in the Ladakh aggression couldn't have had a change of heart, though there is the outside chance that an aggressive Indian Army has shown the Chinese what the cost of such a misadventure could be. Finally, could the request for a meeting be part of familiar old mind games that are standard operating procedure for the Chinese, where they mask devious military intent with a mask of diplomatic outreach? If that is the case, it wouldn't be the first time. There's a full track record of such duplicity. While Prime Minister Modi met with Chinese Premier Xi Jinping for the first time in July 2014 at the BRICS summit in Brazil, the Chinese army was busy mounting instructions in Ladakh's Tumar and Demchok areas. 2 months later, when the Chinese premier arrived in Ahmedabad for his first summit with the Indian Prime Minister, the lilting images of the two leaders on the banks of the Sabarmati River were offset by Chinese incursions in Depsang in northern Ladakh. The famous Wuhan summit in 2018 was to reset ties and create a new framework that could lead to an end to the border dispute. But even as the two leaders met in Wuhan, the Chinese military was busy violating airspace in Ladakh. And finally, last year, When the Chinese premier met with the Indian Prime Minister outside Chennai in Mahabalipuram for some very memorable atmospherics, the Chinese army was busy violating protocols at Pangong, the beginnings of the build-up to the current standoff that began just months later. Whatever the state's takeaways from the meeting, India's trust in China is at an all-time low. Of course, the Indian government is well aware of the Chinese playbook and also recognizes that India has spoken from a position of strength. But in the larger game of Chinese checkers, history has taught India never to take anything at face value, especially when trust is non-existent. Bureau Report, India Today.
Army Chief General Manoj Mukund Naravane, after his visit to Ladakh, said the actions taken by the Indian Army in the last 1 week have been historic. The Army never uses the word historic lightly. But you know what those actions are because we've told you about them. But what is the impact of those actions? Why is it that things have completely changed as far as rules of engagement on the border are concerned? And why is it that the Army says these are historic? We try and explain that for you.
Everything has changed here. In just 6 days, decades of standard operating procedure, protocol, and the old way of doing things has been consigned to history. The Indian Army is no longer in react mode, no longer waiting for the adversary to make a move. No longer playing it purely defensive. After 4 months of a standoff triggered and peppered with hostile Chinese actions and initiative, the Indian Army's way of doing things has just seen a paradigm shift. And things may never be the same again. Gone is the no first move posture. In 2016, the Indian Army's punitive strikes on Pakistani terror units deep inside hostile territory is seen as the prominent genesis of this shift in protocol. An Indian Army shift from playing pure defender to playing hunter-killer when required.
The Indian Army conducted surgical strikes last night at these launch pads. The operations were basically focused to ensure that these terrorists do not succeed in their design of infiltration and carrying out destruction and endangering the lives of citizens of our country.
While India hasn't conducted surgical strikes per se in Ladakh, the actions that began 6 days ago are by an army that has bid farewell to understandings of the past and assumed a highly proactive first-mover role, setting the agenda, imposing costs, preempting enemy action. So what precisely has changed and what are the implications? They are huge. So far in this standoff, while the Indian Army has largely reacted to Chinese aggressions with a defensive posture in the last 6 days, it has taken aggressive initiative to preempt and thwart Chinese actions. A huge shift on the ground. The wait and watch policy is also now gone, with the Indian Army now acting without delay. The earlier emphasis on talks is now strengthened by actions taken in advance. the institutional emphasis on the border mechanism has been replaced by a reality check on how China has totally destroyed those protocols. Finally, the proactive destruction of Chinese surveillance equipment is for the first time giving the Chinese a taste of their own medicine.
चीन समझता है और जानता है कि हिंदुस्तान की फौज इतनी सशक्त है और नेतृत्व, पॉलिटिकल नेतृत्व मौजूदा हालत में इतना स्ट्रांग है कि वो किसी भी देश को दबोच सकता है। तो चीन की कुछ भी मकसद हो और ध्येय हो, चीन उस ध्येय में सफल नहीं हो सकता।
जाहिर है कि चीन चाहेगा कि भारत की सेना की वहां पर कमी हो जाए, इसलिए उसने अभी दूसरा फ्रंट खोलने की कोशिश की है। लेकिन भारतीय सेना इसके बारे में पहले ही अवगत है और उन्होंने पूरी तैयारी कर रखी है। अपनी प्लान्स में 2 फ्रंट वार के बारे में पूरा ध्यान दे रखा है और चाइनीज इस अपने मंसूबे में कामयाब नहीं होंगे।
The Indian Army's new actions may have put China on notice, but they've also escalated the situation, with an angry China both stunned and itching to hit back. One thing has been made clear: few things will ever be the same again at the border. With Shivarur, Bureau Report, India Today.
These last few months through the standoff, you've seen the Ladakh battlefield from the ground. I can guarantee you it's a completely different perspective from the air. And that's why we here on India Today have taken some flight simulation software and put together an actual flight for you to show you what it would look like from the air. And remember, there is an airspace restriction in this area, so helicopters like this one can't even fly over there. But we've taken a simulator to show you what the battlefield looks like from the sky.
Welcome on board this special India Today simulation where we're about to take you to the exact spots of confrontation between the Indian and the Chinese armies. And if you don't know what we're talking about just yet, why don't you join us for this ride? Let's take off. Now, the Pangong Tso, or the Pangong Lake, with Tso being lake in the local language, is the site of the most vexed dispute between India and China in the current confrontation. The lake is about 134 kilometers long, it's about 5 kilometers wide at its widest, and about 60% of the lake is in the Tibet Autonomous Region.
Yeah, this is a lake that has been the site of one of the most vicious disputes between India and China.
And it's also where that famous Amir Khan film 3 Idiots was shot. So this is now a lake which is entrenched in India's collective imagination. Anyone who goes to Leh very often ends up at Pangong and very often in one of those tents, and we'll show you those tents as well. What we're doing right now on this journey is, and remember the Poseidon is a 737-800 aircraft, we're heading first towards the northern bank. We'll start with finger 1 and then we'll go all the way up to finger 8 and then also beyond. So we're now flying over finger 1, and remember the Chinese claim line actually extends up till finger 2. So they think in their heads that they control land up till finger 2, and they're constantly telling the Indian army to pull back till finger 2. So we're just flying past finger 1. You see now finger 2. There are Indian positions in these areas. We're in fact reinforcing those positions. I also want to tell our viewers these are old satellite maps, so do not for a second think that we're giving away any operational details. We are not. These aren't current deployments on the ground. These are just maps to give you a reference, a broad idea of what the entire conversation is about. We just passed finger 3, and that shiv is the Dhan Singh Thapa post. Now this is named after Lieutenant Colonel Dhan Singh Thapa.
I mean, Dhan Singh Thapa is the stuff of legend, and he's really sort of representative of the huge amount of history that drenches every one of the cliffs that we're looking at, in this particular area. You were talking about Finger 3, Dancing Tapa Post. It's much larger, of course, than what, we can see here, but it's an elaborate base that's operated primarily by the ITBP. And this actually became one of the principal areas of defense for the Indian forces during the current standoff, because as you know, Rahul, and where we're going to be flying to next is Finger 4, where all the action began.
Now just heading towards Finger 4, getting and approaching the beach area, and it's in this beach area that we've seen the Indian and the Chinese armies face off brutally twice over just in the month of May.
And it's a beautiful beach. It's a tiny little stretch of land just jutting out into the lake, Rahul. And if you could call one little point in Ladakh ground zero during the current standoff, that would be it. In 2017, there was a big fight over there, captured famously in that viral video. May 5th, there was a big fight over there. It was the trigger point for the entire standoff. May 14th, the troops again fought over there, leading to both sides say that, look, we can't keep brawling like this. We need to talk and pull our troops back. And
so far, everything that happened in April, May, and June, and July was on the southern bank. And from just opposite the the northern bank, as you look towards the south, that's where the current problem is. And the main Indian staging post over there is the Thakung post. And the Thakung post is very crucial because, it's very strongly dominated by the Indians. You've got a very powerful Indian presence there, and all the action that the Indian army has been up to has been staged from the Thakung post.
Absolutely. The Thakung post, like you said, is a staging post. It's the last one before the line of actual control, and it has the Chushul sector all around it on the south bank of the Pangong, Rahul.
So here's what we know about what happened over the weekend. The Indian army got indication in the dead of the night the Chinese were making an ingress into the South Pangong sector, which is when troops that were stationed around Thakung quickly started going up the mountain. So the first post that we took was the helmet post, which is right above the Thakung post, and we started dominating that.
Yeah, that's right. The helmet top and the Kala top, or the black top, are the two heights located just forward from the Thakung post, which were dominated by the Indian army, Rahul. It was a lightning fast action that was mounted in the darkness, because intelligence in this particular area had confirmed that the Chinese were trying to mount some kind of hostile intrusive maneuver to take over those heights and create those facts on the ground. But what we're basically looking at, and once again reminding our viewers that these are not real-time actual pictures, but they're simulated, but this is precisely the locations where the Indian army has now assumed a dominant posture and has all of the Chinese positions, including their tanks and other elements, within line of sight.
So from helmet top, the Indian army then went and made an intrusion into the next hill feature, which is the Magar top. So right after the helmet top, they came in, and remember, you're seeing this when there's light. They were doing this in the pitch of darkness when you know that the Chinese also trying to come up. So then they went and took Magar top. And if you're on top of Magar, you can actually look down and see Chinese positions from the top when you're sitting on Magar. So right from Magar, as we go up further, we then come to Gurung. And we took Gurung Hill next, and we started sitting on top of Gurung Hill. And these are significant because, you've actually tactically outmaneuvered the Chinese by going and sitting on these features.
From Magar Hill and Gurung Hill, Rahul, you basically have perfect line of sight at the very important Moldo base. The Moldo base of the Chinese is basically right on the banks of the Pangong Tso, which is a smaller lake just south of the Pangong, which is visible in these pictures as well. These are large infrastructural, encampments and bases of the Chinese on their side of the Chushul sector, which become completely visible.
Right next to the Gurung Hill is the Black Top, and the Black Top is actually the most significant feature in this range, because this is what gives you the deepest insights into what's happening inside China. So you can see their positions lower down in the valley, and more importantly, you can see their crucial road infrastructure as well, as you can see from that shot which you've taken right above Black Top. That's the feature.
Thank you for watching this episode of Battle Cry. Remember, the standoff that's been on for this many months in Ladakh between India and China is actually very far from over. I can guarantee you that here on India Today and especially on Battle Cry, we will continue to bring you the very latest. The two countries are talking. There is an engagement. There is a hope for peace. But India is not trusting China one little bit. We stand with our soldiers and officers on the front lines, and I promise you personally that we will remain on top of this big story. This is about India. Thanks for watching.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.